Picture this. You're diving deep into the crystal-clear waters of the Mediterranean Sea, just off the coast of Egypt. The sunlight fades as you go deeper and deeper. Suddenly, your eyes widen in disbelief. There, emerging from the sandy ocean floor, are massive stone columns, giant statues of pharaohs, and entire buildings that shouldn't exist underwater. You've just stumbled upon what archaeologists are calling Egypt's real-life Atlantis. But here's the crazy part. This isn't some made-up story from a movie. This actually happened. And the discovery is so mind-blowing that it's completely changing everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt. We're talking about entire cities, massive temples, and treasures that have been hidden beneath the waves for over 1,000 years. Today, we're diving deep into the most incredible underwater discovery of our lifetime. We'll explore how entire Egyptian cities ended up at the bottom of the sea, what amazing things archaeologists found down there, and why this discovery is making experts rewrite the history books. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. So grab your virtual diving gear, because we're about to take a journey to Egypt's lost underwater kingdom that will blow your mind. Let me tell you about one of the most incredible days in archaeology history. It was the year 2000, and a French archaeologist named Frank Gaudio was leading a team of underwater explorers off the coast of Alexandria, Egypt. They weren't even looking for what they found. They were just doing a regular survey of the seafloor. But then something extraordinary happened. Their equipment started picking up strange shapes on the ocean bottom. At first, they thought it might be rocks or maybe some old shipwrecks. Boy, were they wrong. When the divers went down to investigate, they couldn't believe their eyes. There, lying 150 feet underwater, were the remains of not one, but two entire ancient cities. These weren't small villages. We're talking about major Egyptian cities that had been completely lost to history. The first city they discovered was called Heracleion by the Greeks, but the Egyptians knew it as Thonis. This place was absolutely massive. Imagine a city bigger than downtown Manhattan, with huge temples, busy harbors, and thousands of people living and working there every single day. And now it was all underwater, perfectly preserved like a time capsule. But wait, it gets even better. They also found the city of Canopus, another major Egyptian port that had vanished without a trace. These cities weren't just important. They were like the New York and Los Angeles of ancient Egypt. Ships from all over the Mediterranean would come here to trade gold, spices, and precious stones. The things they found down there were absolutely incredible. Picture this. Statues of Egyptian pharaohs and gods that are 3 stories tall, just lying on the ocean floor. Massive stone blocks that weigh as much as school buses. Ancient coins, jewelry, and pottery that look like they were dropped yesterday, even though they're over 2,000 years old. One of the coolest discoveries was a giant black granite statue of the Egyptian god Hapi, who was the god of the flooding of the Nile River. This statue is so big that it took several boats and cranes just to lift it out of the water. And it was in perfect condition, like it had been protected by the sea itself. They also found something that made historians go absolutely crazy. Inscriptions and texts that proved these cities were way more important than anyone ever imagined. We're talking about cities that controlled all the trade coming into Egypt, cities where pharaohs built their most important temples, cities that were basically the gateway to ancient Egypt. But here's what really got everyone excited. The preservation was unbelievable. You know how when you find old ruins on land, they're usually all broken and weathered down by thousands of years of wind and rain? Well, underwater is different. The sand and silt acted like a protective blanket, keeping everything in amazing condition. The archaeologists found wooden ships that still had their original paint. They discovered delicate jewelry with tiny details still visible. They even found everyday objects like cooking pots and oil lamps that looked like someone had just finished using them. And we're not just talking about a few scattered artifacts here and there. We're talking about entire city blocks, complete neighborhoods, harbors with ancient anchors still in place, and temples with their original decorations still intact. It was like someone had taken a perfectly preserved slice of ancient Egypt and hidden it under the sea. The discovery was so important that it made headlines around the world. Museums started fighting over who would get to display the artifacts. National Geographic made documentaries about it. And archaeologists from every major university wanted to join the excavation teams. But this was just the beginning. As the teams kept exploring, they realized that what they had found was way bigger than just 2 cities. They had stumbled upon an entire underwater world that was going to change everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt. What do you think? Have you ever heard about underwater cities before? Let me know in the comments what you find most amazing about this discovery, and don't forget to hit that like button if this story is blowing your mind as much as it blew mine. Now you're probably wondering the same thing I was when I first heard about this. How on earth do entire cities just end up underwater? I mean, we're not talking about a small fishing village here. These were major Egyptian cities with hundreds of thousands of people. You can't just lose track of something that big, right? Well, the story of how these cities sank is almost as incredible as finding them in the first place. And it involves natural disasters that would make any Hollywood movie look tame. Let's start with the basics. Both Heracleion and Canopus were built on what we call the Nile Delta. Now, if you've ever seen a river flowing into the ocean, you know that it creates this fan-shaped area where the river spreads out before it reaches the sea. That's a delta, and the Nile Delta was absolutely huge. We're talking about an area the size of Massachusetts. But here's the thing about deltas. They're not exactly the most stable places to build massive cities. The ground is basically made up of mud and sand that the river has been depositing for thousands and thousands of years. It's kind of like building your house on a giant pile of wet sand at the beach. It might seem solid at first, but it's not going to stay that way forever. The ancient Egyptians knew this was risky, but they didn't have much choice. The Nile Delta was where all the action was. It was the perfect place for trade because ships could sail right up the river into the heart of Egypt, and it was incredibly fertile land for farming. So they built their cities there anyway, probably thinking they could deal with any problems that came up. For hundreds of years, everything was fine. These cities grew bigger and more important. Heracleion became the main port where foreign ships had to stop before they could enter Egypt, kind of like an ancient customs checkpoint. Canopus became a party town where wealthy Egyptians and Greeks would go to have fun and worship their gods. But then disaster started striking. And not just one disaster. We're talking about a perfect storm of natural catastrophes that happened over several hundred years. First came the earthquakes. The eastern Mediterranean is sitting on top of several tectonic plates that are constantly moving and grinding against each other. Every few decades, massive earthquakes would shake the region. And remember, these cities were built on soft, muddy ground. When an earthquake hits solid rock, it's bad enough. When it hits soft delta mud, the ground literally turns into liquid. Scientists call this liquefaction, and it's absolutely devastating. Imagine you're standing on what feels like solid ground, and then suddenly the earth beneath your feet turns into quicksand. That's what happened to these cities, over and over again. Buildings would sink, harbors would collapse, and entire neighborhoods would just disappear into the mud. But the earthquakes were just the beginning. The real killer was something called subsidence. This is when the ground literally sinks lower and lower over time. Think about when you step in really soft mud at the edge of a lake. Your foot keeps sinking deeper the longer you stand there. That's basically what was happening to these entire cities, except it was happening super slowly over hundreds of years. The weight of all these massive stone buildings, temples, palaces, harbors, was literally pushing the cities deeper into the soft delta mud. Add in the earthquakes that kept shaking everything loose, and you had a recipe for disaster. Then came the tsunamis. When underwater earthquakes happen in the Mediterranean, they create these massive waves that can travel across the entire sea in just a few hours. These waves would slam into the Egyptian coast with incredible force, pushing seawater far inland and then dragging everything back out to sea when they retreated. But perhaps the most devastating factor was something that sounds almost boring compared to earthquakes and tsunamis. Sea level rise. Over the centuries, the Mediterranean Sea was gradually getting higher and higher. This wasn't like the climate change we talk about today. This was a natural process that took place over many hundreds of years. As the sea level rose, it made all the other problems worse. The earthquakes became more damaging because there was more water to flood in when the ground cracked. The subsidence happened faster because the water made the mud even softer. And the tsunamis could reach further inland because the sea was already higher to begin with. The final nail in the coffin came in the 8th century AD. A series of particularly devastating earthquakes hit the region, and this time the cities couldn't recover. The combination of centuries of sinking, rising sea levels, and massive earthquake damage was too much. Within just a few decades, both Heracleion and Canopus were completely swallowed by the Mediterranean Sea. The craziest part? People at the time knew it was happening, but they couldn't do anything to stop it. Ancient writers described how the cities were gradually being abandoned as more and more neighborhoods disappeared underwater. But the process was so slow that each generation probably thought they could just rebuild and carry on. Eventually, though, the sea won. The last residents packed up whatever they could carry and moved to higher ground. The great cities of Heracleion and Canopus vanished beneath the waves, taking with them over 1,000 years of Egyptian history. For more than 1,000 years, these cities remained hidden under 150 feet of water and sand. They became legends, stories that historians weren't even sure were real. Until that amazing day in 2000 when Frank Gaudio and his team proved that sometimes the most incredible legends turn out to be true. This whole story just shows how powerful nature can be, doesn't it? Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Could something like this happen to our modern cities today? And make sure to subscribe because we're just getting started on this incredible journey. Okay, now we get to the really exciting part. All the incredible stuff they found down there. And let me tell you, when I say incredible, I mean absolutely mind-blowing. We're talking about treasures that would make even the most successful treasure hunters jealous. Remember, these cities didn't sink overnight. People had time to grab their most valuable possessions and run. But here's the thing. When you're dealing with massive stone temples, giant statues, and entire harbors, there's only so much you can take with you. So all the really big, really impressive stuff got left behind, perfectly preserved under the sea. Let's start with the statues, because honestly, they're probably the most jaw-dropping discoveries. Picture the biggest statue you've ever seen in a museum. Now multiply that by about 10. That's what we're dealing with here. The star of the show is definitely that massive statue of Happy I mentioned earlier. This thing is absolutely gigantic. We're talking about a statue that's 17 feet tall and weighs about as much as 4 elephants. It's carved out of red granite, which is incredibly hard stone that's almost impossible to work with even using modern tools. And the ancient Egyptians carved it so perfectly that every single detail is still crisp and clear after sitting underwater for over 1,000 years. But Happy isn't alone down there. They found a colossal statue of a pharaoh that's even bigger, nearly 20 feet tall. The crazy part is that archaeologists still aren't 100% sure which pharaoh it represents because the face got damaged when the city sank. But from the style and the hieroglyphics around the base, they think it might be Ptolemy II, one of the Greek pharaohs who ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great conquered it. And we're not just talking about 2 or 3 big statues here. They found dozens of them scattered across the ocean floor. Statues of gods, goddesses, pharaohs, and nobles. Some are standing upright like they're still guarding their ancient temples. Others are lying on their sides, looking like sleeping giants. One of my personal favorites is a beautiful statue of the goddess Isis. She's carved from black granite and she's holding a sacred oil lamp. The detail work is so incredible that you can see individual strands of hair carved into the stone and tiny decorative patterns on her dress. The artists who made this were absolute masters of their craft. But the statues are just the beginning. Let's talk about the temples, because what they found there is absolutely incredible. The main temple in Heracleion was dedicated to Ammonius Gerub, which was a special form of the Egyptian god Ammonius. This temple was huge. We're talking about a building complex that would cover several city blocks. The temple had massive stone columns that are still standing underwater, holding up nothing but seawater now. Inside the temple ruins, archaeologists found something that made historians go absolutely crazy. Intact hieroglyphic inscriptions that are still perfectly readable. These aren't just random symbols carved into stones. These are detailed records of religious ceremonies, trade agreements, and royal decrees that tell us things about ancient Egypt that we never knew before. One inscription describes a religious festival that was held in Heracleion every year, where people from all over Egypt and the Mediterranean would come to celebrate. Another talks about the taxes that foreign traders had to pay when they brought their goods into Egypt. It's like finding an ancient Egyptian newspaper that tells you exactly what daily life was like 2,000 years ago. They also discovered the remains of smaller shrines and temples dedicated to other gods. There's a beautiful little temple to Khnum, the ram-headed god who was supposed to control the flooding of the Nile. There's another one dedicated to Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, which makes sense since Heracleion was such an important center for international trade and diplomacy. But my absolute favorite discovery has to be the harbor area, because it's like a perfectly preserved snapshot of ancient maritime life. They found ancient stone anchors still sitting where ships left them over 1,000 years ago. They discovered the remains of ancient lighthouses that guided ships safely into port. They even found the stone foundations of warehouses where merchants stored their goods. And the ships. Oh my goodness, the ships they found are incredible. Most of them are merchant vessels that were probably caught in the harbor when the final catastrophic earthquake hit. These ships are so well preserved that you can still see the original wood, complete with tool marks from the ancient shipbuilders. One ship they pulled up still had its cargo intact. Jars full of ancient wine, containers of olive oil, and even some gold coins that are still shiny after all these centuries underwater. It's like opening a time capsule that someone sealed up 1,200 years ago. But perhaps the most exciting discoveries are the everyday objects that tell us how regular people lived in these cities. They found cooking pots with recipes still scratched into the clay. They discovered children's toys, little wooden boats and clay animals that some kid was probably playing with right before their family had to evacuate the city. They found jewelry that's so beautiful it could be sold in stores today. Gold bracelets with intricate patterns, silver rings with precious stones, and necklaces that must have belonged to wealthy merchants or nobles. One piece that really got my attention was a gold amulet in the shape of the Eye of Horus that still had its original chain attached. The preservation is so incredible that they even found organic materials that normally would have rotted away centuries ago. Leather sandals that still have their original straps. Wooden combs with all their teeth intact. Papyrus scrolls that you can still unroll and read, even though they've been underwater for over a millennium. And here's something really cool. They found evidence of the multicultural nature of these cities. Remember, Heracleion and Canopus weren't just Egyptian cities. They were international trading ports where people from all over the Mediterranean came to do business. So mixed in with all the Egyptian artifacts, they found Greek pottery, Roman coins, pottery from what's now Turkey and Lebanon, and even some artifacts that probably came from as far away as India. It's like these cities were ancient versions of New York or London. Cosmopolitan places where different cultures mixed and traded with each other. The scale of this discovery is just mind-boggling. We're not talking about finding a few old pots in someone's backyard. This is like discovering an entire civilization that had been completely lost to history. And they're still finding new stuff every single diving season. What's your favorite treasure from this underwater discovery? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with anyone who loves ancient mysteries as much as we do. Here's where things get really interesting, and honestly, a little bit mind-blowing. This discovery isn't just about finding some cool old stuff underwater. It's completely changing how historians and archaeologists understand ancient Egypt, and some of the things they've learned are absolutely revolutionary. For starters, let's talk about how important these cities actually were. Before this discovery, most people, including lots of experts, thought that Alexandria was pretty much the only major port city in ancient Egypt. Sure, historians knew about Heracleion and Canopus from old writings, but they figured these were just small trading posts, maybe minor fishing villages. Boy, were they wrong. What they found underwater proves that Heracleion was actually the most important port in all of Egypt for over 600 years. Every single ship that wanted to trade with Egypt had to stop there first. It was like an ancient customs checkpoint, but way more important. If you wanted to buy Egyptian gold, papyrus, grain, or any other Egyptian goods, you had to go through Heracleion first. This means that for centuries, Heracleion was basically controlling Egypt's entire economy. The priests and officials who ran the city were probably some of the richest and most powerful people in the ancient world. They were collecting taxes from every merchant ship that came through, and there were thousands of them every year. But here's what's really crazy. None of this was in any of our history books. For over 1,000 years, historians have been telling the story of ancient Egypt without mentioning what was probably its most important city. It's like trying to understand modern America without knowing about New York City, or understanding ancient Rome without knowing about its main port. The discovery has also completely changed our understanding of ancient Egyptian religion. You see, both Heracleion and Canopus weren't just trading cities. They were major religious centers where people came from all over the Mediterranean to worship Egyptian gods. The temple complex in Heracleion was apparently one of the most important religious sites in all of Egypt. The inscriptions they found show that pharaohs would come here for special ceremonies, and that priests from this temple had huge influence over Egyptian politics and religion. But here's the really interesting part. These weren't just traditional Egyptian religious sites. Because these cities were international trading ports, the religion that developed there was a unique mix of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman beliefs. They found statues and inscriptions that show how different cultures were blending their gods and religious practices together. For example, they discovered evidence of a cult that worshipped a god who was part Egyptian Osiris, part Greek Dionysus. This kind of religious mixing was way more common and way more important than historians ever realized. It shows that ancient civilizations were much more connected and influenced by each other than we previously thought. The discovery has also revealed some fascinating details about ancient international trade. The artifacts they found show that these cities were trading with places that are way further away than anyone expected. We're talking about goods from India, China, and even sub-Saharan Africa. One of the coolest discoveries was a cache of ancient coins from all over the known world. Roman coins, Greek coins, Persian coins, and even some coins from ancient kingdoms that historians are still trying to identify. This proves that these Egyptian cities were at the center of a truly global trade network that stretched from Spain to India. They also found evidence of incredibly sophisticated banking and financial systems. Clay tablets with what are basically ancient credit agreements, records of international loans, and even something that looks like early insurance policies for merchant ships. The level of economic complexity they've uncovered is way more advanced than most people realize ancient civilizations were capable of. But perhaps the most important thing this discovery has revealed is how connected the ancient world really was. For too long, historians have studied ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and ancient Rome as if they were completely separate civilizations that barely talked to each other. What Heracleion and Canopus show us is that the ancient Mediterranean was actually one big, interconnected world where ideas, goods, technologies, and people were constantly moving back and forth. These cities were like ancient versions of Hong Kong or Singapore, cosmopolitan trading hubs where East met West and different cultures mixed together. The genetic evidence they've found is particularly fascinating. Remains of people buried in these cities show ancestry from all over Africa, Europe, and Asia. These weren't isolated Egyptian communities. They were truly international cities where people from dozens of different cultures lived and worked together. This has huge implications for how we understand the development of human civilization. Instead of thinking about ancient cultures as isolated groups that occasionally bumped into each other, we now know that there were sophisticated international networks connecting civilizations across thousands of miles. The technology they've discovered is also incredibly impressive. The harbor engineering at Heracleion was so advanced that it could handle ships from all over the Mediterranean, even in rough weather. They built sophisticated lighthouse systems, breakwaters that could protect hundreds of ships at once, and harbor facilities that wouldn't look out of place in a modern port. The preservation of organic materials has also given us unprecedented insights into daily life in these cities. They found everything from ancient recipes written on pottery shards to children's school exercises written on pieces of broken pottery. One particularly cool discovery was what appears to be an ancient shopping list, written in both Egyptian hieroglyphs and Greek letters. But maybe the most important thing this discovery teaches us is how quickly and completely entire civilizations can vanish. These weren't small, primitive settlements that got wiped out by some natural disaster. These were major cities with hundreds of thousands of people, sophisticated technology, and international importance. And yet, within just a few centuries, they had completely disappeared. The knowledge of how to build their harbors was lost. The trade networks they controlled collapsed. Even the memory of how important they had been faded away until they became legends that most historians didn't believe were real. It makes you wonder what other major civilizations might be sitting at the bottom of the ocean, waiting to be discovered. And it makes you think about our own cities and how permanent they really are. If massive, important cities like Heracleion and Canopus could completely vanish and be forgotten, what does that say about the civilizations we're building today? The work at these underwater sites is far from over. Every diving season brings new discoveries, and archaeologists estimate they've only explored about 5% of the total area where these cities are buried. Who knows what other incredible secrets are still waiting to be uncovered down there? What do you think this discovery means for our understanding of the ancient world? Have you ever thought about what secrets might be hiding under the oceans near where you live? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to hit that subscribe button because the story of humanity's lost civilizations is far from over. So there you have it. The incredible story of Egypt's underwater Atlantis that's rewriting history books and blowing minds all around the world. From the amazing moment of discovery to the mind-boggling treasures lying on the ocean floor, from the dramatic story of how these great cities sank beneath the waves to the revolutionary insights that are changing everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. But here's the thing. This is just the beginning. Archaeologists estimate they've only scratched the surface of what's down there. Every single diving season brings new discoveries, new mysteries, and new revelations about our ancient past. There could be dozens more cities waiting to be discovered in the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and oceans all around the world. And that's what makes this so exciting. We're living in the golden age of underwater archaeology. With new technology, better diving equipment, and more sophisticated research techniques, who knows what incredible discoveries are waiting just beneath the waves? If this story fascinated you as much as it fascinated me, you're going to love what's coming next on this channel. We've got more incredible underwater discoveries, more lost civilizations, and more ancient mysteries that will completely blow your mind. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss any of our videos about the incredible secrets of the ancient world. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed diving into Egypt's underwater Atlantis with me today. And here's something cool you can do right now. In the comments below, tell me what lost civilization you'd most like to see us explore next. Ancient Mayan cities swallowed by jungle? Viking settlements lost beneath the ice? Mysterious Pacific islands that vanished beneath the waves? Your suggestions help us decide what incredible journey to take you on next. Also, if you know someone who loves ancient history, archaeology, or just incredible stories about lost civilizations, share this video with them. Trust me, they're going to thank you for introducing them to one of the most amazing discoveries of our lifetime. Finally, if you want to dive even deeper into the world of underwater archaeology, check out the description below where I've linked to some amazing documentaries, research papers, and museum exhibits where you can learn even more about these incredible underwater cities. The ancient world is full of secrets, and we're just getting started on uncovering them. Thanks for joining me on this incredible underwater adventure, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore another mind-blowing mystery from our planet's incredible past. Until then, keep wondering, keep exploring, and never stop being amazed by the incredible world we live in.